so how this is gonna work is that last time we did a little bit of like a snake draft, kind of like mentioning our rankings. We're not gonna do that this time because that took way too long. Um, we're all just gonna read our rankings, and I have a sheet here that's showing me where we differ the most, and that's the players, we're gonna talk about. We're gonna talk about why we differ so much on some of these players, because we're not gonna talk about the guys that, we have one spot ahead or one spot below. Like that's the difference between like one, two, three, four, and five is not that big. But like, if we have some guys that are six spots ahead type thing, like those are the players we're going to talk about. So I'm going to read my top 15. Adam will read his, and then Hunter will read his, and then I will make sure to mention, where we differ the most. So for my top 15, I got Derrick Henry at number one, plain and simple with him. Saquon Barkley at two. I got Kenneth Walker at three. Bijan Robinson at four, Jonathan Taylor at five, Jahmyr Gibbs at six. I got Joe Mixon at seven, Alvin Kamara at eight, Kyren Williams at nine, and then I got David Montgomery at 10, James Cook at 11, Chuba Hubbard at 12. This one's surprising, but Breece Hall at 13. I got James Conner at 14, and then Brian Robinson Jr. to round it out at 15.
I can go next, and then Hunter, if you want to follow it up.
You got it.
Similar to Mark, I have Derrick Henry, King Henry once again at the number one spot. Saquon Barkley at number two. Got to have him at number two. I'm not going to go in depth about every player, but I just want to say homecoming against the New York Giants. I think he's, as painful as it is for me to say it, I think he's due for a big week, even though I think the Eagles are very hit or miss. But Derrick Henry at one, Saquon at two. I got Bijan Robinson at three, Kenneth Walker Jr., or the third. I don't know why I wrote Jr. Kenneth Walker the third at four, Joe Mixon at five, Alvin Kamara at six. I have James Cook at seven, even though he was out this past week. Jahmyr Gibbs at eight, Breece Hall at nine, Kyren Williams at 10, Jonathan Taylor at 11, assuming he will play, David Montgomery at 12, Chuba Hubbard at 13, Tony Pollard at 14, and James Conner rounding out my list at 15.
All right. Here we go. Ready? Number one, we're gonna go with Saquon Barkley. Number two, we're gonna go with Ken Walker. Number three, we're gonna go with Kyren Williams. Number four, we're gonna go with Bijan Robinson. Number five is Jonathan Taylor. Number six is Derrick Henry. Number seven, Jahmyr Gibbs. Number eight, Alvin Kamara. Number nine, Joe Mixon. Number 10, James Cook. Number 11, David Montgomery. Number 12, Chuba Hubbard. Number 13, Brian Robinson Jr. Number 14, James Conner. And number 15, it's tough. It really is, but I think I'm going to go with Jordan Mason at number 15.
Okay. All right. So one thing that is a little surprising to me, at least from this list, I think Derrick Henry is a little interesting because me and Adam both have him ranked at one, which is where I think he should be rest of season. But Hunter, you have him at six here. What's the reasoning for that?
Yeah, I mean, like, believe me, I have Derrick Henry, and he's been nothing but amazing for me, and I probably should put him at number one. But he's going against crazy hot Tampa Bay Buccaneers team. They just put up 51 points. Obviously, their defense, they allowed 27 or so, but still, they are the home team in this matchup. I could definitely see an upset potentially here. Regardless, I do think Derrick Henry is going to still play very well. I mean, being ranked sixth means that you're probably going to put up at least 15 points or so, maybe
Yeah.
18. I just can't trust him to be one or two. I would totally be fine if I switch my rankings and put him at like four or five, but I don't know if I could put him at one or two. By the way, I made a mistake. Instead of Jordan Mason being at 15, it's Breece Hall. My bad. I meant to say that before.
All right then. No worries. To me when I
Wow.
look at to me when
Disrespect to
I
Jordan Mason.
I'll put him at 16.
to me when I look at Derrick Henry, I just think that like he's proven nothing but why he should be ranked not only in the top five, but in the top three, maybe even top two every single week. I mean, every time, I mean, like he was probably like I avoided him in drafts, and it's kind of it's upsetting to me now. But like, man, like I look at Derrick Henry, and like you're on a team like the Baltimore Ravens where you're running the ball so much, and he just kind of proves why like the PPR doesn't really matter because like he just gets the yardage anyway. So in any type of league, like he's just number one for me as a running back. That's my reasoning. And plus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers rush defense, I don't think is particularly that anything special. Um, that's just my reasoning with it. And I just think, Derrick Henry is going to see probably 20 plus carries in this game.
Sure.
Was I supposed
Adam,
to
you
go
want to say
into?
anything?
Yeah,
Did you
was I
want to say
supposed to go?
anything or you haven't got nothing to say?
Um, yeah, a lot of the same reasons as you, Mark. Not gonna go too in depth on Derrick Henry. I just think for a lot of the same reasons, he's almost guaranteed to give you about 20, 15 to 20 fantasy points. And I think that's almost certain, at least the last couple of weeks. Again, he got off to a little bit of a rough start, but it was a tough game to start the season against the Kansas City Chiefs. Their run defense is very good. As a matter of fact, I have Jordan Mason, and I'm not starting him because he's going up against the Kansas City rush defense next week. So, with Derrick Henry, I think it's almost guaranteed that he's going to get you the points. He's a focal point of that offense, like we talked about. It's a run heavy offense. We'll get into wide receivers. I think Zay Flowers is definitely, probably the favorite target on that offense, but almost always on every snap, it's either going to Lamar, who will keep it on an RPO, or it'll go to Derrick Henry. So I definitely think for that reason, he's number one. He's guaranteed a touchdown almost every week. He had two this past week. And like you said, I just don't think the Buccaneers rush defense is enough to kind of put an end to this run that he's having. I mean, he's a future Hall of Famer, in my opinion. And I think with that being said, he's got to be number one, at least for now, rest of season.
All right. And the next player I wanted to touch on was Kyren Williams because I have him ranked at 9, so he's still inside my top 10. Adam has him ranked at 10, so that's also still inside the top 10. And then Hunter's got him ranked at 3, so he's
Yeah.
definitely a little bit higher on Kyren Williams than
Yeah.
than we
I've been
are.
I've been a bit of an outlier so far on this podcast.
That's
But,
okay, but
We're
that's
targeting Jordan Mason and Hunter. That's what we take away from the running back
it's not
rankings.
really a target. It's just where we're differing. That's what we're going to talk about.
Nah, I'm only messing.
yeah, no, you're good. Yeah, I mean, I going into this season, I kind of said that Kyron would kind of be in like a sophomore slump kind of deal, which he kind of has been. He hasn't been amazing. He's been above average, but he hasn't been what he was last season. He wasn't a rookie last season technically, but his first year as like a real starter. So that's why I say sophomore slump. But guys who had years like that, are definitely prone to have at least a few games the next season where they ball out. And that usually happens against bad opponents. And he happens to be going against the Las Vegas Raiders this week or next week, I guess you could say. I think simply put, and I'm going to say this for when we get to the wide receivers, that receiver on the Raiders is going to have the same thing here. But for a bad matchup, I'm definitely picking a running back that has proven in the past that he could really, really play well. Now, he hasn't, like I said, he hasn't really done that yet this season, but I think this will be a real breakout game for him.
That's a good point. To me, when I look at Kyron Williams, I want to rank him higher. It's just when I look at some of the matchups that some of these other players have that I ranked above him, like Derrick Henry, I just think, even if he does worse than Kyron Williams, I just am not going to rank Kyron above him. Saquon Barkley is going up against the New York Giants, and I think he's just going to have a field day in that matchup. Kenneth Walker, I mean, he's starting to really get involved as a receiver, and like that's just only gonna up the ceiling for Kenneth Walker, and he's already like a 15-point type of player as is. And then some of the other guys like Bijan Robinson, Jonathan Taylor, Jahmyr Gibbs, Joe Mixon. I would maybe, if I had to redo these rankings, I would maybe put Kyron Williams above Alvin Kamara. But yeah, that's just kind of my reasoning for why Kyron's a little bit further down my rankings, but again, he's still inside my top 10, so
Yeah, I'm keeping Kyren at 10. I think he's good enough to make the top 10. I don't know if I'm putting him over Kamara. I think that's where I'll disagree with you. And the only reason being is I look at injuries a lot when I do these rankings. And with Spencer Rattler being in there, obviously Derek Carr's out, Olave's now been rolled out, and his production value has gone down as well. I just feel like Kamara's a safe pick, kind of similar to Derrick Henry. He's that veteran running back that you can just rely on. That's going to get you touchdown. He's going to get you points. He's going to get you yards, and he'll kind of just truck through guys. And for that reason, I like Kamara a lot. I actually have him at 6. For me, I don't love Kyren as much, and the only reason being is that I just don't like the way that the Rams run their offense. And obviously, injuries are another thing. Like I said, I look at that. Cooper Kupp is coming back. I think they're going to be running the ball a little bit less. I think Matt Stafford will get a little bit more comfortable throwing. Once again, they're coming off the bye week. I do like that Kyren is going up against Vegas. That was a really good point, Hunter. But I just feel like I don't know if I'm ready to put him top 5, top 6 yet. I think that 8, 9, 10 spot, which is where I have him, is a safe pick for him.
Yeah,
Okay.
just real quick, last week, I said like my list of running backs, and I said like Joe Mixon would be like 8 or so last week, and but I also said like a bold prediction that like don't be surprised if he finishes as the number one running back for the week, and if it wasn't for Sean Tucker, he would have been. The reason why I'm saying this now is because I'm just gonna make another prediction. I just thought of it. So I'm not going to pick Kyron because I'm already high on him. I'm going to go with James Cook here. Just real quick synopsis there. He's out for this week against the Jets, but then he's going to be playing against the Tennessee Titans at home. I think he's going to have a nice little rebound. So just want to throw that out there just so he could have a little clip. And yeah.
We'll make it a short. I 100% agree with you. James Cook coming off the injury. The Bills got to get going. They got to start winning. They
Sure.
don't have that wide receiver one anymore, but they do have that RB1. If he can stay healthy, I agree with you. I have him having a good week. I don't know if it'll be the RB1, but I think he's gonna have a good week.
No, yeah, I just wanted to say that before we get to the next segment. That's all. All right, so go ahead.
All right, cool. Another player I think I want to touch on is Jonathan Taylor, and this is not going to be towards Hunter this time.
Oh,
So me and Hunter actually have Jonathan Taylor both ranked at 5, so inside the top 5, and then Adam has got Jonathan Taylor ranked at 11,
I do.
just outside the top 10. So,
Just outside.
Adam, what's the reasoning there?
Again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but injuries. That's the thing I look at. Everybody was saying pick up Goodson, pick up Sermon this week. The Colts have been a very interesting team thus far. Obviously, they've had two different quarterbacks with Joe Flacco and Anthony Richardson. We talk about Josh Downs being a waiver wire pickup week after week. We talk about, you know, I feel like they're just more of a passing team right now. And until you kind of have that stable quarterback under center, it's really hard to figure out what that offense is going to look like. Um, and they've just been getting hurt by injuries. I mean, that's really why I had him outside the top 10. He's not confirmed yet if he's playing next week. I wanted to include him on the list because he is just that good, and I think we can all agree on that. But I just ranked him just outside the top 10 because if he does end up missing time, I don't know. I mean, then obviously he wouldn't be in the top 15, but I think it was safe to obviously give him a spot. I thought 11 was a really good pick just after Kyren Williams, actually, because I had him at 10. But, we'll see if he can stay healthy. I think he has the opportunity to be a top 5 running back. So make that my bold prediction for next week, week 7. But for now, if he's not going to play, we'll see. He's dealt with injuries. Richardson is supposed to be back, so that is encouraging. But the Indianapolis Colts have just been a very interesting team. I don't know who are they going up against if either of you have it on hand. Um, I'm not too sure who they're going up against next week. I can look it up, but who is it?
Miami.
Miami. So that's a good matchup for them. I think Miami, I feel confident with him against Miami's rush defense. But again, he's not 100% certain. When I did these rankings, I did it based off of injury. Because you look at, I mean, especially from the fantasy perspective, all of our running back rooms are somehow impacted by injuries. I think everyone can agree on that. So, again, Taylor's just that good. He has to be a top 15 running back, but he's outside the top 10 because of injuries. If somehow he is confirmed and he's cleared and he's ready to play against Miami next week, I think he could be definitely top 10, maybe even top 5.
Yeah, that's definitely a good reason. My reasoning with Jonathan Taylor is pretty simple. I just think, if he is healthy and he's ready to go, he's a top 5 running back to me. Jonathan Taylor is actually someone I was a little concerned about going, after the first like 2 weeks because, he dropped 10 fantasy points and then 15. And I was like, well, this Colts offense doesn't really look too good. But then Jonathan Taylor started to pick up the production a little bit more. And, it seems that he might be the one guarantee on the Colts offense. Like Adam said, it's a little bit weird, the Colts offense, but I think the one guarantee, again, is Jonathan Taylor. And he's just a really talented player. So to me, like, he's healthy. He's a top five running back for me. Yeah.
So last week, I believe I ranked him higher than everybody. I think I put him at like two or so. Obviously, that didn't pan out because he didn't even play.
Yeah.
Uh, but I definitely could see him doing very well against Miami. They are definitely towards the bottom of the league right now, just on both sides of the ball. The Tua injury really is hurting them. Like it's so rough to watch. Like we just did our wide receiver rankings, or we're about to do our wide receiver rankings, and we don't have, just spoiler alert, we don't have their best receiver, the guy that was a first team All Pro, first ballot Hall of Famer, like future first ballot Hall of Famer, ranked as the number one player in the NFL for 2023-24, Tyreek Hill. Like he's done nothing really while he's gone, and neither is Achan, who we didn't even mention here. And just the Dolphins team as a whole is just in a bad flunk, and that's why I
Yeah.
think Taylor will dominate as well.
I think to chip in on the Dolphins, I think you can't really rank any of the Dolphins players because it'd be unfair and you wouldn't be doing justice to them until Tua comes back or they have their quarterback, because I don't look at like Skylar Thompson or Snoop Huntley as one of these guys that's going to make Tyreek Hill better or Devon Achane or even their defense because the offense needs to work for their defense to work. So until Tua comes back or whoever, whether they draft a quarterback next year or they just somehow bring somebody in the door, a veteran, I can't really rank Tyreek unless he has a breakout game and he goes off next week, which is possible. I mean, we're talking about, like you said, the number one player ranked by the players this year, or HN as well. I wouldn't be doing justice to them by ranking them in the top 15 because without Tua, this team is just they're not complete. So
Just to go on the record, if Tua was in, Devon Achane would be a top two running back for me.
Oh yeah, I would say top two. I would say top two, but like top like seven for sure.
He's easily top five for me.
And
top
Tyreek would
five,
be number
top five.
one, or number two receiver. Like,
I have Tyreek in Dynasty.
yeah, I'd say
Bad year to have Tyreek because of Tua, but if they
yeah,
can get a
everyone on my
healthy
team.
quarterback in there, or if they can get a healthy Tua in there, which I did see a report today. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there is some encouraging signs that he is
Yes,
supposed to be
Yes.
playing in 2024. So
yeah, he'll be
while we're on
playing.
the Dolphins, I mean that's
Yeah.
positive. So hopefully we can start ranking them. But for now, I can't rank either of them.
Yeah. All
But we're
right.
ranking 31 teams here, not 30.
Another player that we're all actually pretty similar on this one particular player, but I want to talk about him because I think he was kind of like, I guess you could call him a steal of the draft like this year. David Montgomery, drafted in like late rounds, like sixth, seventh, eighth round, and here he is as a top 10 running back, like week in, week out almost, or top 15 at least. Like he's putting up 15 plus points every single week. And like some of the top running backs you drafted, like Jahmyr Gibbs, is putting up similar type production. And I'm not saying Jahmyr Gibbs is bad. I still love Jahmyr Gibbs, but I mean, between him and David Montgomery, it's basically equal.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, to me, like, man, it doesn't matter who the Lions are going up against because you already know that David Montgomery is going to get you a touchdown. You already know Jahmyr Gibbs is going to get involved in that offense. Like, it doesn't even matter that it's a running back by committee because they're both getting like 15 plus opportunities every single game. Like, I mean, what's not to be excited about? Not just Jahmyr Gibbs, but David Montgomery,
I mean,
especially.
I think the Lions are excited. I mean, look at the contract they offered him before the game, and obviously the Lions completely blew out the Cowboys, but he had maybe one of his best. I mean, first of all, he's had a touchdown in the last 3 weeks. He had two this past week, 80 yards on the ground rushing and 12 attempts, which is phenomenal. Like he was better than Gibbs this past week, and clearly the Lions love him too because they extended him through 2027. So if you have him, I think congrats. I think you put it best. He's the steal of the draft. We knew what we were getting out of him, like a veteran running back. We saw this with Chicago years ago, but I saw a report that the confidence wasn't there. He wasn't himself in Chicago, but I think he really has found himself in this Ben Johnson offense in Detroit. This was a guy, their offensive coordinator, that was looking to potentially move on and get a head coaching job, but said, I want to stay in Detroit because look at how good this offense is. And we saw Detroit's offense at their best this past week against Dallas. When Jahmyr Gibbs, who's arguably one of your best players other than Amon-Ra, when he's having a good week but not great compared to your RB2, I mean, that's when you know things are working because you have Sam Laporta, you have Jahmyr Gibbs, you have David Montgomery, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jared Goff looks great. I mean, they're just such a good offense. Obviously, on defense, they lost their best player, and that's heartbreaking. But as a team, they just look so good. And I think David Montgomery is such a huge part of that, especially on offense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I might have said this on the show before, but in case I haven't, in my league, I have Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry as my running backs. It's pretty ideal, I will say, but there's someone in the league that has David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, and I still am jealous of him, as
Oh
crazy
my
as that
God.
sounds.
I
The
am
two,
too.
yeah, like the two of them as a tandem. I remember back in, I think it was 2017, Alvin Kamara's rookie year with the New Orleans Saints. He shared the backfield with Mark Ingram, and they both made the Pro Bowl. And we really haven't seen a better like 1-2 punch since, but I feel like this one's just blowing it out of the water. Like the Montgomery and Gibbs are just unstoppable. They're each getting 15 like fantasy points a game. Like you can't ask for any more. One of them is guaranteed a touchdown every week. Like and touchdowns are like king of fantasy. And you will automatically get that if you have both of them in your lineup. And I mean, since we're talking about Montgomery, that extension is just a phenomenal signing. I mean, as Adam said, he
Yeah.
kind of never really found his footing in Chicago. That's more on Chicago than it is on him, for being completely honest. Um, but he's really shining and dominating in the Lions' backfield, and it's crazy because there's two of them. There's another guy that complements him by being a receiving back, and it's like one of the main reasons why I picked them as my Super Bowl runner-up. And this is obviously before Aiden Hutchinson got hurt. I can't necessarily say that my Super Bowl pick has changed just yet, just based off the injury, but those two in general are a big reason for that.
Yeah, I think
Right.
it could give them more motivation. I picked them as a runner-up as
Yeah.
well, losing to the Chiefs. But I mean, look at how many injuries the Chiefs have. I mean, everybody's dealing with injury. Aiden Hutchinson is a terrible loss. Trust me. I mean, even though they won this game and they completely like killed the Cowboys on Jerry Jones's birthday, and as a Giants fan, nothing makes me happier, especially since I won this week because my opponent started Dak and CD. Nothing to do with his other players. I mean, it's still a loss at the end of the day for the Lions because Aiden Hutchinson is just such a good player. But going back to the offense, I think you're absolutely right. As long as all these players are working on all cylinders and everything is firing correctly, I think what Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson have done with this team on offense has been tremendous. And I think you could still make the case. I'm not taking that title window or title runner-up title or whatever like headline away from the Detroit Lions because I still think they have so much depth and I still think they could potentially go on a run, especially if Jared Goff is working on offense. And I think, like I said, David Montgomery is going to be a huge part of that.
All right. I think that about rounds it out for the running back rankings.
All right. Well, thanks so much for watching this video. Today we ranked our running back rankings, wide receiver rankings going into week 7. Also gave you a couple waiver wire pickups going into this week and talked a little bit about week 6. Best of luck to your teams this week. Make sure to follow us if you haven't followed us already on Instagram at Blitz Banter Pod and subscribe. It really helps out the YouTube algorithm at Blitz Banter Podcast on YouTube. Like some of the YouTube shorts, some of the memes, some of the rankings that we're posting on Instagram, and all of that content that's going to be coming out on a weekly basis. And thanks again so much for watching. Best of luck to your teams this week in week 7.